welcome to Past, Present, and Future, or Three Questions, the podcast where we learn about people's career journeys, how they got to where they are today, and where they'd like to go to next. I'm Parrots Cohen, a technologist and a wordsmith, and in my time in industry, I've been fortunate to work with both large companies and small startups, alongside a number of very talented and hardworking individuals. This podcast is some of my conversations with them, where we learn about their journeys and what motivates them. If you'd like to be in the podcast, please feel free to reach out. You don't have to have a certain level of seniority or a number of years of experience. We all have something to share and learn from each other. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast or get involved in the collaboration, we'd also like to hear from you. All right, looking forward to our journey together as we learn more about each other and enrich ourselves in the process.
Hello, everyone. I have a real treat for you today. We're really happy to have Manu on the show. Welcome to the show, Manu.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's start from the beginning. We'd love to hear about the beginning of your career in tech and how that all started.
Sure. So, I was not really trained to do tech. I went to a school that was really destined. I was destined to be a teacher or maybe a researcher and stay in academia. Um, I started a PhD and then realized that public research wasn't really for me, so I left early. I only did 1 year, and then I started working for Google. So my initial contact with the tech industry was Google's Summer of Code program. So it's a program where Google pays students instead of going to flip burgers like McDonald's. If you need to make some money, they work on open source projects. And I did that twice for the first 2 years of the program. So that was 2005 and 6. And then I liked it. And then when I stopped my PhD, I went to work for Google. And the initial start, the start of my career was kind of bumpy. After working for 1 month with them, I got tongue cancer, so I went to get that treated for half a year, and then survived happily. And then I started my real career. So that's really what started it. I wouldn't say there were very distinct milestones. I think the start was really less about the understanding how software and code worked, and more soft skills of learning to work with people, working on an existing code base, being a team worker. So all of these were very gradual learnings.
I think that's a great characterization. A lot of times in tech, it's only in hindsight that you start to see just how everything comes together. Your understanding of best practices when it comes to architecture, how to advocate for things. As an engineer, you worked at a lot of interesting kind of teams and roles, and including the artist formerly known as Twitter. What would you say kind of is some of like the favorite software projects that you're able to talk about that you kind of like, this was a really big challenge, or this was something that really kind of stretched me as an engineer, you really enjoyed?
Um, I would say the most fun project that I worked on that was challenging and really fun to do was really my first project. So immediately when I went back to Google after uh, cancer treatment, I was put on the Gmail team, and it was 2008. That was when Gmail was working on making themes. So talk about a dream job. I was basically painting Gmail into these different colors, and not just colors, there was just images everywhere. And this was really early on in the web application world. Gmail was a pretty early full featured web app, and all of the things that we tried to we tried to bend CSS to its limits. Um, just to give a hint of the environment at that time, 2008 was the time Chrome didn't exist. It was Internet Explorer 6 and 7, Firefox 2 and 3. All the web standards were not really very well developed yet, so we had to do a lot of special casing for stuff that only works on one browser, on the other one, and do a bunch of crazy negative margins and stuff to just bend the CSS standard to make things work. So it was really challenging in a way, just because the development environment was very stable and very not very predictable. All the browsers had their own quirks that we had to work around and sometimes even exploit. But it was also a lot of fun because the result was just making Gmail look kind of funny and quirky and colorful and lots of small images everywhere.
It's that's amazing. I definitely there's I'm sure I'm not the first one to note of kind of the corollaries of that time and kind of to an extent the time we're living in now when you're working with when there isn't kind of a standardization yet and you're in kind of different platforms or the different kind of aspects of the digital supply chain are being built and you're able to kind of to customize and work around and have some sort of a standard. And I mean, today it's we forget just how much Gmail revolutionized interacting with your emails and making it an enjoyable experience as opposed to something that you kind of dreaded. Um, so definitely thank you for your part in making it not just something that functions well, but something that looks well and was visually appealing as well.
Yeah, that was fun.
Um, yeah, we'd love to talk a little bit about in more the art space. Something you're known for, if you love, if you would want to talk about a little bit, is Gumix, and then kind of there's other iterations of that at Twitter and kind of and beyond, which is just kind of great, just commentary on culture at Google and beyond and tech overall, and just kind of a couple frames. You do such a great job of capturing the ethos, the zeitgeist, with the kind of a great balance of social commentary. We'd love to know like how that started, what was the inspiration, and even more important, like what gave you motivation to keep it going after the first couple iterations.
Sure. So I grew up in France, where there's I think a little bit everywhere in the world there's this culture of political cartooning. When you have a newspaper that has news about the country and the world and the government, there's always that role of the political cartoonist who is trying to poke fun at these things. I would say maybe in France it's even more developed than in the US, for example. Something like, at some point the New York Times decided to completely remove all cartoons. I don't think that would ever happen in France. It's just too ingrained in the culture, just because the Franco-Belgian cartoon scene is so vibrant. Um, Not to say it's not vibrant in the US. Maybe it's just less deeply ingrained in the press environment. So when I joined Google, it felt, even initially, it was such a large and prominent company. It was always in the news in some way or another. It almost felt like its own small little country. And it felt like this role of the court jester was missing, and I felt like I wanted to give that a try. Um, Initially, it was very small scale, maybe just things about the life of an engineer and things about the team, and sometimes employees becoming a little bit entitled. That was a very different job market back then, where there was a lot more demand than supply. So people were lured into these nice roles and very, very well treated, and sometimes becoming a bit entitled. So that was one thing that I could poke fun about at. And then it kind of grew into more of a political, maybe not political, but higher scale commentary with criticism of the higher ups and the company ethics and strategy. Um, I think I almost had too easy of a job because no one else was doing this. And if you're working at the company and there's this guy who makes random comics that are germane to what you're doing and that you can relate to, even if they're not that good, you would still want to sign up as free comics about your work environment. Who wouldn't want that? So I was always encouraged by having a more and more um, dedicated readership. I think at any point there was about 10% of the company that was following my stuff, um, and just having the privilege of having that voice was it felt really nice, and it definitely made me want to keep going.
And it's something that like even me in my little corner of Google, it's something that I appreciated and was able to kind of to just see things through a different lens, and definitely enjoyed kind of following it kind of as you continued it beyond. And we were definitely placed in an interesting period of time at Twitter, which has been widely covered. So we're not going to delve into necessarily over here. Um, I would love to learn a little bit more about kind of what you're working on currently. The kind of the Nobel Prize history, I think, is definitely very fascinating. And again, you always happen to somehow be a little bit kind of in the zeitgeist, whether you plan to or not. And we won't touch up how you're in the zeitgeist, but definitely love to learn more about that project and kind of what fascinates you these days when it comes to engineering, or if you want to kind of share a little bit about your opinions about AI, I'd love to hear about that as well. But yeah.
Yeah, so I would love to be a lot smarter and be able to predict how things will evolve with AI. I have to say I'm um, a bit overwhelmed by how it's evolving, and I don't think again that I'm smart enough to understand how it will turn out. Um, but I also do cartoons about this. They're mostly just because, again, my role, as I see it, as a bit of a political cartoonist, it's always to go against the grain and against the commonly accepted opinions. So because AI is so hot right now, I try to criticize it, just because, if the current government is one side of the political spectrum, I would lean to the other side. So just to be, against the grain. Um, so maybe if AI was booed by everyone, maybe I would be supporting it. But right now I'm mostly trying to criticize it. So yeah, I'm lucky that I've gained enough financial stability, or working in this industry for 15 years and not having really ever let my very simple lifestyle catch up um, to salaries you can get when you're working full time at a big tech company. So I've always been able to save, and now I have enough of a cushion that I can just work on drawing, which is basically uh, not generating any income, and that's okay. That's the way I've designed it. So I'm lucky to be able to do this physics Nobel Prize research. So I'm basically watching YouTube videos about physics stuff all day long. That takes more time than actually drawing the popularization part of it, try to explain some of the concepts to people. So that's really fun. And I say explain it to people, but really the main goal is explaining it to myself. I mean, that's what I like about it, is it forces me to understand things. So just so that I can try to draw about them. And even if nobody reads my stuff, I would still have fun doing it. And then so that's one side. On the AI side, I was I was lucky to be in this industry at a time, as I said, where the job market was in the opposite direction as it is now. I think now people are having more of a hard time finding a job. Um, 10 years, 15 years ago was really the other way around. So I was really lucky to be at that in the industry at that time and have a very worker friendly environment. And I'm also lucky to have been in the industry at a time where AI doesn't exist yet. At this right now, it's a lot more challenging. I can't really say how things will evolve. The only things I can say is what the problems I see with the current model is that it seems like the junior developers are being replaced by AI because AI can just generate um, things that are usable and just immediately, as opposed to waiting for someone to make it happen. But the senior devs are maybe less in danger for the moment because they still have the insight on how to make all the pieces work together and make them maintainable. But then when the senior devs retire and there's no pipeline of junior devs to replace them because they haven't really been learning from their mistakes because they've just made AI do the whole thing, then what happens? I'm not quite sure. I think AI at this point is good at generating prototype stuff or throwaway code or make something work really fast. But at this point, I don't think it's good at producing something that is testable and maintainable in the long term. I'm sure this is something that it will get better at in the coming years, seeing how fast it evolves. But at this point, I do see still the need for slightly more experienced folks to be the sort of the conductor of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight because it really is about that long-term view, and there's the efficiency gains of today, but what does it do to the ecosystem? And you've seen these ecosystems develop over time. So that's definitely a great perspective. Um, and yeah, I like what you said about kind of like a lot of the time in producing the art is doing the research about it, and you see kind of just the pinhole view or kind of the outcome or the output of the piece of art, but really is like it's all the nuance that's conveyed, and it's really I think that's a really an amazing aspect of human art is all the intention and layers that are in there, which you can't always kind of capture from mid journey or the like. That kind of is a missing piece of context. Um, Donning the hindsight lens, as it were, um, or kind of others. What have you found kind of to be the most useful way? Kind of, I'm in tech. I want to kind of share observations or kind of following that tradition of kind of not necessarily I think just bringing awareness. And I think like for me, I think within my own journey in tech, there's the moments where you kind of recognize like, hey, I can help kind of impact things in a certain way. And I think like it really is a way to kind of to start dialogue around important things. There are kind of large issues, which I think one person on their own can't necessarily change. But I think like in the theme of kind of seeing things through a different lens. And I think this also ties into what you mentioned about even with the success you had in your career, you remain grounded to a certain kind of mindset and didn't kind of because I definitely know being in tech, being in this environment, you can kind of get overwhelmed by the and kind of have that become your new norm. And yeah, so what was helpful for you? I guess this is a larger question that has kind of grown a little bit, but like what was helpful for you kind of in maintaining a certain outlook and also kind of what do you think would be helpful to others who want to also raise awareness or kind of shine a light or kind of find their artistic voice, as it were, kind of within these larger companies that are continuing to grow and evolve. And there's always going to be, we're human. There's always going to be kind of things that are going on or decisions that can maybe we can influence kind of to have a better outcome for the public.
Um, so I guess for the whole discussion, we've been on two fronts, which is the tech engineering front and the artistic cartoon front, which have some parallels, but I'm not sure I can make it clear which one I'm talking about each time. I think I've been kind of muddling things together. I think what helped me for the whole time was to work with really smart people, and working at a big tech company that's always been very selective for the people it hires. That helps. It means that you're never the smartest person in the room, or the most experienced. If I find myself in a situation where I'm the most experienced person in the room, it feels nice. I also like doing the mentorship part. If I'm arrogant enough to see myself in that role, if I feel I can be useful to others, that I enjoy that. But I also try to naturally move away from those situations, because I guess it's a bit of a selfish part where I can share some of my knowledge, but I also want to learn from others. So yeah, whenever I feel like I'm not learning from others, because maybe there's just a situation where I'm the most experienced or senior person in the room, even though I can definitely, even people who have less experience, they can still teach me stuff, definitely. But on average, I would try to seek different conditions. Um, and maybe it's a personality thing. Maybe I think engineers, especially software engineers, they tend on average to be more introverted, and they maybe are less, they have less, on average again, less pride or self confidence. They're not the kind of alpha type that boasts about everything. So there's maybe more of the imposter syndrome in that role, and having very smart people around you is that makes it even more pronounced. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, if you always have that attitude of, oh, am I really deserving of my current position? That makes you want to keep learning. I would say everything I said is probably similar in the art world. Just try to surround yourself with people who are smarter, better, or have something that you admire. Um, for me, that always pushes me to um, try to improve. Even if I just follow people on social media and they do amazing stuff. Um, if I'm in a bad mood, that will make me give up. Oh, and I'll never get to their level. But most of the time, it will push me to try to emulate them and get slightly better. I don't know if that's a good answer.
I think it's an
I'm kind of
amazing
going
answer.
on.
I love that you a complex kind of multi-pronged question. That was actually a great way to kind of tie both those sides together. And it really is, whether it's a more kind of technical discipline or it's the technical discipline of art, it really is about who you collaborate with, who you can learn from, and how do you kind of push yourself to learn, to challenge, to grow. And that's really kind of where the enjoyment, and that's where you build great things, is when you're challenging yourself and you don't just kind of stay in a place of stasis and you don't stagnate. um so grateful, like it's truly an honor to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank
um
you.
Thank you so much. I'll share in the notes some links where you can find some of Manu's work. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.